CSPs need to move from silos to more horizontally integrated approaches. I suspect the topic of solution openness must play a part in this de-siloing of the telco clouds. Bruce, what does this mean to you, and how do data center fabric solutions need to be built to accommodate this?
Yeah, so I think, again, the theme here is going to be the standardization of interfaces and the standardization of encoding across those interfaces as being equally important. I mean, we've gone from these fairly vertically integrated stacks, and that's not to say those don't still exist or don't still have a place, because of course, buying a single stack from a vendor guarantees that from top to bottom, you're going to get a validated solution. So there's still value there, but certainly there's more ambition with the adoption of microservices and gRPC and some of these standardized methods to model interfaces and model functionality using things like OpenConfig for there to be a more, I guess, decomposed solution. There's nothing to say that you shouldn't be able to take hardware from one vendor, software from another, automation from a third, and then your analytics and AI engine from a fourth, as long as the stack is built in such a way that those points can interact with each other. And I think we're, at least on the networking side, we're in a fairly good place in the industry now versus where we used to be. I think things like OpenConfig have finally started to get the traction that they need in order to become proper standardized schemas. I think the adoption of a lot of the gRPC management and operational interfaces that we're seeing in our NOSes today, things like GNMI, the extensions to that to cover operations and GNOI, extending the control plane off box with gRibbie. I mean, we have this slew of gRPC services now that are well understood. They have well-defined specifications. They're using Proto, so they're very efficient on the wire. I think these are all fundamental to being able to split apart the solution in order to allow CSPs to drive the cost efficiencies that they're looking for. On the automation side, it's a little more interesting. We are seeing kind of the need for multi-vendor solutions because the current model of buying a management platform from every vendor that you buy software from doesn't really scale that well, especially if you're trying to alternate vendors between some of those hundreds to thousands of cloud locations. So I think the multi-vendor aspect of this, again, could be saved a little bit by OpenConfig. But again, I think the main theme here is that the standardization of the interfaces themselves it's never been at the point it's at right now. Historically, going right back to when we were just doing basic switching, right? When we had an initial set of SNMP MIBs and there was no proprietary extensions to them whatsoever. I think that's the only time in recorded history in networking that we've had this degree of standardization. So I think that allows vendors to act more quickly, to onboard additional software. All the standardization only benefits the industry. And of course, it benefits customers too, because it gives them more choice. If I have a standard way to interact with a NOS, then anybody's controller can interact with that NOS. And certainly this has been a part of our goal within Nokia and how we've built out our data center portfolio. Standard interfaces everywhere. You can pick and choose which pieces you take, and you can take off the shelf or from other vendors for any parts that you want to do yourself or otherwise not buy the Nokia parts. So I think standardization is the theme here at play. And as I said, I don't think we've ever been in as good a place in the industry for it.
Yeah, and maybe I could amplify a little bit and extend to the topics, Bruce, where, in our research, a couple of reasons why this, kind of horizontal scaling has shown value as part of the openness of interfaces overall, has been, as functions get distributed in either 5G or enterprise services or, edge applications, and, from an overall point of view, the challenges of scale are huge. And so the benefits of a consistent operational model at one level of expressing policies and configurations, and at another level, interpreting events, to the extent that you can normalize the operational model, that produces substantial TCO benefits at scale, is one thing that we've found in many cases. And another thing that we've kind of taken to observe is that either in a growing core site, central site of operation, or across a number of distributed application sites, elasticity isn't a wish list item anymore.
Yep.
There's no way to really avoid the need to simplify, whether it's scale out or scale back, up or down, and actually investing in those capabilities as you guys have is very, very key. I think those are two extra parts of that topic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the third is probably the angle of extensibility, right? So standardization is great as long as you follow the mold, as long as you're using the cookie cutter as it were. But I think solutions having a degree of extensibility, and again, you see this in Kubernetes with CRDs. We have some of this in SR Linux with our NDK. I think standardization is great, but you don't want to be locked into just being able to do whatever has been standardized, because you have no ability to compete at that point. If the network or some degree of automation is something you're planning on competing with your competitors with. So I think extensibility is another kind of key factor to this, that, we can standardize to the point that you can basically do a common set of functions across a large number of vendors, but there still needs to be some room for people to differentiate. And I'm not speaking of vendors here. I'm speaking of, customers, cloud providers, or CSPs competing with each other. So I think extensibility in the solution, having that kind of native built into the foundation, is also quite key.